Today on the podcast, we have retired Green Beret with one tour in Vietnam from 1969 to 1970 as a hatchet force platoon leader for MACV-SOG, who went by the codename Mongoose. He's a husband, father, and proud grandfather. He's a hunter, fisherman, cowboy action shooter, and a Colorado vocational instructor retired. Today we have John Bartlett. How's it going, John?
I'm doing great. Thank you for inviting me here.
Welcome to the Veterans Voice Podcast. How's it feel?
Oh, a little daunting. First rodeo for me here on this type of podcast. But again, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah.
It's quite a journey to, I'm going to call it a healing journey.
Okay.
To go over the history of my bio. It's even kind of cleansing for me.
Sure.
And I do want to do this, and I have some things to share that I hope help others.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of the whole point of having you on. You have a very extensive history in the military, but you're also, how old are you? 70?
I'm 75.
You got a lot of lessons for us young cats out here that we need to learn. So I'd like to capture a lot of those through your entire biography and, help this younger generation kind of get on their feet.
And thank you again for that opportunity. And let me explain why. When I was getting ready to get on the bus here in Colorado Springs to go to the induction center in Denver to start the military part of my life, my dad and mom seen me off there. Dad was a World War II cruiser sailor. He had 8 battle stars, which means he was in 8 major engagements, naval engagements.
Wow. And
he received a Silver Star for gallantry at Guadalcanal when the cruiser ship Astoria that he was serving on sank. They lost hundreds of sailors and Marines that day. Dad and my uncle survived.
Wow.
I was a real smarty-alecky, loudmouth punk high school guy. Had all the answers in my mind anyway. And my dad looked, as we were shaking hands, he looked me in the eye, and the tone of his voice and the choice of words startled me. He said to me, "John, if you want to live through this, you better find some good sergeants and listen to them." That proved accurate.
Absolutely.
Beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Wow.
And I link that to this is my chance to share some knowledge or wisdom or at least experience that may help.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're going into this with the same outlook.
Yes.
So I'm honored to host and have you and interview you, and you sound honored to put this information out there so we can create something pretty great today.
Yes.
So yeah, I'll outline the entire podcast. I'd like to start back in your childhood, just kind of where your family came from, where you grew up, home life, parents, siblings, things like that.
Okay.
And then we'll go into how you got into the military, then obviously your time in the military, and then some post-military time. What did you do as a civilian for work, things like that? How did you find purpose after the military, after being in during such a difficult time in our country's history? And then, any other words of wisdom towards the end there. And
okay.
How's that sound?
You'll help me stay on track as we go.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I got a notebook with 12 pages of bullets in here.
All right.
Hopefully I can stay on track. But
yeah.
So where'd you grow up, John?
Right here in Colorado Springs.
That's awesome.
My great-grandfather, Ephraim Bartlett, came to this very area in 1848 from Bethel, Maine. He was 12 years old, an indentured apprentice, blacksmith, and wagon wheel maker.
Wow.
Before him, the Bartlett family was a fairly common name. It was Bartolot, actually, in those days. Came to Plymouth in 1623. Okay. The reason was the 4 brothers were on the wrong side of the Battle of Argyle, which was against the king. And the choice was basically the gallows or get on the boat. And he came not with his brothers, he came separately. So they missed the first Thanksgiving type deal. Stayed around Bethel till the colonial wars and then went other places. If you served in the military, they paid you with land grants, and that's what they wanted. So that's how they got to Bethel from Plymouth. Earlier, they came to the British Isles with William the Conqueror in the Battle of 1066 at Hastings, got the coat of arms then, and I guess they couldn't be happy with the king or whatever, and got ushered out type of thing. As we look at the family tree, they did serve, 3 generations served in the American Revolution. I believe 3 of them were women type. The rest men, Continental Army or Minutemen type thing. Interesting tidbit on the side is one of the granddads was 60-plus years old, but still required to serve. So, but you had the option to bring somebody else that would serve for you. I'm sure it was a financial arrangement.
Right.
And when they reported in, the colonel said, thank you for the enlistee. We appreciate the soldier. And by the way, we need a cook. You're shanghaied. So he got to stay and later applied for a retirement, but was denied because he wasn't a soldier. He was a servant type thing. So it all backfired for him. One, Granddad Jonathan crossed the Delaware with Washington.
Wow.
And his background was interesting. They had to record their service with 2 observers to get their retirement and report to their past commander for signature. He said, in the beginning, I was serving for General Benedict, and then he left. And I didn't know what to do, so I went back to the farm. They served short enlistments to take care of the farm at home. Okay. And I couldn't imagine when your general is taken away from you and you're fighting the strongest army in the world, But he said, I went back and served the rest of the war with General Washington. And we enjoyed that little bit of humor. And when there's a very fine picture of that, and General Washington standing up in the front of the boat. And I often wondered, well, which one's Granddad Jonathan? Well, none of them. That picture was painted quite a few years after, and those were the artist's friends in there. Silly me, I they didn't have a camera to take a picture so they could paint it, but he did make it through. Our family has served in most of the wars down through the generations. I believe there's 13 generations.
13 generations of war fighters.
Yes.
Wow.
We did not get involved with the war on terrorism or Afghanistan type thing. For them, and the way I grew up, was you go in to the military. It's your duty as a citizen, and you do your time, and you do a good job, and you come home with an honorable discharge. You look and find for a good job, and the best part's a good woman, settle down and have kids. Most of our ancestry is blue-collar type thing.
That's what do they call that? The American dream?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Well, it was for us, and we were raised accordingly.
Yeah.
And without any modesty about it, that's what young men do.
Yeah.
And you need to get busy and do a good job of it, was how my dad and uncles had served, and that's what – and one great uncle served in World War I type thing. I didn't know any different type thing. I was surprised when people in the 60s protested and stuff. I thought something was wrong with them. I still do think that way. At that time, we had a different draft type thing, and it was, and I don't want to offend any of the listeners, but not everybody was raised that way.
Yeah.
Not everybody wanted to be in the fighting. So they would do choice of service to avoid that.
Yeah.
In a polite way. For instance, the Navy saw a lot less action than Army infantry or Marine infantry type thing. Once people got in the military, there was a group that found a job that wasn't in infantry or the combat arms, armor or artillery. And I'm okay with that up to the point when you're a granddad, at least say that honestly.
Right.
I served and I did my part.
Yeah.
It takes everybody to help us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Type thing. I wasn't that way. I wanted to be in the thick of it.
Yeah.
Barry Sadler's Green Beret song came out, and I was overwhelmed with that. And John Wayne came out with the movie. What I did was volunteer for the draft at the time.
Okay.
That draft of those years. Actually, it was an enlistment incentive in that draftees only had to serve 2 years, and then you had reserve or guard time. Okay. With volunteering for the draft and volunteering for Vietnam or Korea, okay, the draftee, what happened is you went to infantry basic, infantry advanced training for Army. That was called Tigerland at the time. You had 30 days off. You went to an infantry battalion because of the high casualty rate. They needed fillers. If you survived that, you came home and went home. So less than 2 years, you could get out with full VA benefits, have it done, did your duty, and ongoing with life. For me, I wanted to be, we called it Special Forces. In those days, you did not mention Green Beret. That was your hat.
Right.
They were a lot more private. Some of the mottos for the different groups were the quiet professionals.
For sure.
Yep, they were because of the top secret work that they didn't need to be public information at that time. So I did that infantry basic, AIT at Tigerland at Fort McClellan, Alabama. At that time, we had a choice to go what they called Instant NCO Academy. The older sergeants called it Shake and Bake because you went 12 weeks. It was all infantry. It was aimed right at Vietnam. Most of the TAC NCOs were Vietnam veterans of that battle. And I don't want to confuse with the word veterans. They had done one or multiple tours in Vietnam as infantry sergeants.
Okay.
The training was good. They were trying to help us know what to do when we got there. We transitioned from M14s to M16s is a good example.
Yeah.
There was more live fire. There were more live grenades, that kind of training. And then afterwards, they'd hung out with us and told us what helped them. We were blessed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was good. Just on a humorous note, they did not teach us, because of range safety, they did not teach us rapid change of magazines.
Oh, wow.
The NVA taught me that.
Yeah.
It can be done, and it's important.
Yeah.
Anyway, during that time, because I qualified for OCS in West Point, I turned West Point down because a girlfriend was pregnant at home and we were going to get married, and we did. So went to OCS, same thing, 22 weeks, all about an infantry platoon leader. And the TAC officers there were the very most of them that I encountered had already been at least one tour.
Okay.
Waiting to go back type thing. Jump school after that. Special Forces training popped up. Volunteer. I volunteered for. I knew I was going to be an infantry officer, but I wanted to be in the 196 because I thought they had a good-looking patch. That was my mental state.
That's why we all do it, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's funny.
But my roommate was prior service, and he grabbed my, I think it was a 1049 volunteer statement paper or something like that. You idiot! You want to? And he filled it out, and sure enough, I went to Special Forces officer training.
Yeah, cool.
Jump school, and then officer training. That was 12 weeks at that time.
Yeah, I want to dive into that deep because I obviously went through in 2015, so I want to hear the difference between the Q course now versus then. But before that, I kind of want to ask you about your home life right before joining the military.
Okay,
So maybe
sure.
some like values instilled by your father or mother or just family in general that kind of guided you towards making the decision to join the draft, and then carry those same values throughout your time in the military.
Okay. Basic, Dad was a blue-collar worker. He was what they call an operating engineer. That he was the controlling supervisor at the big power plant, Drake, that they just tore down here in Colorado Springs. He was a high school graduate of Palmer High School, and it's kind of like a lay supervising position, NCOIC sergeant in charge type level.
yeah.
Mom was a seamstress at Bain's Men's Store, and I want to come back to that later. It was at that time the finest men's store in Colorado Springs for business suits and things. It was not like a J.C. Penney suit at all.
Yeah.
It was those who had money went there to dress appropriately, type thing. Church was not strong with us, but the raising of the brothers, my two brothers and I, was. You don't lie, steal, or cheat. You take care of your family.
Right.
Family first, state second, nation next. Do the right thing and do it well. Pride at work type of thing. It was important to my dad that one or all of us go to college, which I did later on in life type of thing. One brother ended up with Colorado Springs Fire Department of 39 years and months type of a deal. Those guys are brave every day that they're on duty.
Yeah.
Other brother was a maintenance worker for the city of Colorado Springs. The Depression, Mom and Dad were raised in the Depression, very security conscious. Basically, no amount of risk is worth any amount of gain was their ideal. The security of pay and benefits and a good retirement was pounded into our head, and we all proceeded exactly that way. Going back to church at the Battle of Iron Bottom Bay off Guadalcanal, Salvo Island, where Dad's ship went down, he had a grudge against Christian sailors. They were allowed to go below decks and not fight, and he was above decks fighting. And
Interesting.
It was. It stayed with him his whole life. He mentioned it only when my uncle, because they served together. That's how my mom met my dad, was through my uncle. They'd talk then, and us boys would listen. They were fairly open with what they talked about, even the casualties, the sharks and things when they went overboard. Wow. He was a staunch Republican, and the irony of the situation when I listened to he wasn't angry. I'm thinking of the emotion. He disgusted maybe. Why don't they fight? I'm fighting. The other guys are fighting. I wondered about that, and then it happened to me at CCN. I had a brother officer, lieutenant, come, and he said to me, I'm a Christian and I have a wife and kid at home. Would you take my mission for me?
Yeah.
I did, and then I had a grudge.
Yeah, totally understandable.
Yeah, I have gotten over it. The Bible helped me there.
Right.
And I am blessed that way.
Yeah, I ask you kind of about some of your family values back in those days, because it was very easy for you to make the decision to go serve your country and protect the flag, So nowadays I feel like that's kind of going away. Like a 18 to 21-year-old boy does not want to go serve his country anymore. So I'm trying to, crack the code as to what's the difference between how we were raised back in your day versus currently,
I think the difference from my point of view only is we were raised to help others, starting with family. For instance, if a brother got in a little scrap at school, you better be on your brother's side,
right?
Because Dad was going to have an issue with it.
Right.
helping others. To Dad taught us friends or family you got to choose, and you help your friends if they need help, which money, effort, whatever it was. You take care of each other. We were other-oriented instead of self-oriented. The only entitlement we had in those days was the GI Bill with an honorable discharge, if I remember correctly, type of deal. The worst thing that could happen is come home with a bad discharge. And I don't even know how many levels they had in those days. If I knew, I forgot. So the entitlement thing, we weren't self-oriented. At least I didn't think we were. It was, and we certainly didn't enlist or look at this. If I do this, I get all that. These entitlements, and I'm not. I need to learn more about the entitlements available to the enlistee today. I don't know. I'm glad it's fixed, and it's better. I'm hoping you, yourself, and your brothers you serve with got a better homecoming than we got. And I believe the American people fixed that, and the American veterans that suffered it fixed that over the years. So I truly hope it's better. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's that famous quote, it's not what your country can do for you, but you can do for your country.
Well, that's right. Jack Kennedy gave us that. He gave us the beret, too. And in those days, the older NCOs, the Special Forces was operating in the 50s. My first team sergeant was in a 5-man team north of Hanoi in 1952. Type of a deal. A lot of them and the Lodge Bill soldiers, a Lodge Bill soldier, because of Henry Cabot Lodge, one of his descendants helped pass a bill where an immigrant could get citizenship by joining the American Army. Special Forces was after them because of the language qualification and the network connections behind the curtain. Also, the ones that were recruited, you didn't have to encourage them to fight communism. It was their only chance to fight for the mother country and have a chance to help relatives that still there. So it was sincere. I can remember most of them were senior NCOs that I knew. If they were in charge of training that day, there was no jacking around. It was totally serious. My first team sergeant, he ran the wire. They gunned down his wife, and he held his daughter so tightly that he injured her spine. He had her holding like a football, trying to get through there. And she would be bedridden the rest of his life. He slept in the senior NCO barracks. That was his house. The team room was his family. And there was a tightness there. I recently heard from an active duty NCO that he didn't trust immigrants, Lodge Bill soldiers, because he thought maybe they were infiltrators. Well, maybe today, but not then. No, they would tell you. They weren't rude about it. They weren't overbearing about it, but tell me about it, Sergeant. I want to know what you went through. You got a matter-of-fact old soldier briefing to a young soldier. And you could do with it as you wished. Did I answer you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's intense. The caliber of soldier back then versus what's being created today, it's definitely that quote I just said. I feel like now it's shifting to what can my country do for me? I'm putting the uniform on. What are you going to do for me?
I have seen that only once in a National Guard soldier from another state. In fact, he was adamant and proud of that viewpoint. Let me explain. I don't have access to active duty military because I'm a retiree. Agent Orange got me 3 years ago, and I have a compromised immune system from chronic something. Anyway, CLL leukemia. Let me explain that. It's not a death sentence. It will be with me when I die, but I have to live with it. Okay, so having a compromised immune system means I live a semi-isolated life type thing. I avoid Walmart, public schools for the most part, any closed-in thing with other folks.
Right.
Type. I have to.
Yeah.
It's a medical thing, but I have the internet, and I have 10 acres in the Colorado Rocky Mountains, and I got hunting and fishing out the gate. So
Yeah, I'd never leave.
not so bad.
Yeah.
Going back to why I did not want to be a sailor. Don't like water. Don't like swimming. Didn't want to do that. So for me, for some reason, it came down to Army or Marines. And the draft, because of, for me, it was kind of like an offer of try it if you like it, stick around. If you don't, you have served your time, you completed your duty, and you go on with your life, and you have your full VA benefits, which being raised by depression age parents, those benefits are important. You got your schooling or your training and your home loan. It was an important part of it, type deal. And that worked out for me. And I need to be careful how I say this. What did not work out for me, because I was a draftee, 5, 6 years later, I was rifted out, reduction in force. There were 5,000 people, 5,000 officers on my orders alone. At least that's what we were told. And what it is, it's end time in service. Thank you for helping us. We appreciate it. You have 30 days and you're out. Where my bitterness came was because I was a draftee, I was barred from enlistment. In those days, that meant you were put in a classification with draft dodgers, deserters, that kind of deal. And I made the wrong decisions. Everybody tried to help me, my family. I was bitter because I thought I was at least good enough to be an E5 sergeant,
Right.
type deal. In fact, the young lieutenant that signed me out of the Army, I had more time in combat than he had in the Army, And I carried the chip on my shoulder about the size of a sheet of plywood for quite a number of years. Friend Drew Dix, Medal of Honor winner from Pueblo, Colorado, tried. My old team sergeant, old team guys, everybody tried to help, but I wouldn't turn it loose. That was my dream, to be a soldier.
Right.
And to be in Special Forces in those years, that there was no higher honor.
Yeah.
And it was based on performance of the individual soldier. Most of them were NCOs.
Right.
Type thing.
Yeah, go into detail on the Special Forces training. How did that go? You said it was 12 weeks.
That was a form of embarrassment at that time for the officer.
Okay.
Okay. Our training was only 12 weeks long. You were supposed to be a senior captain having graduated from the career course.
Right.
Because you would handle company and battalion and regiment type efforts as an advisor. So you needed that background. Okay. High casualty rate again. No, the qualification was, do you have a pulse and do you want to go there? So away we went. There was no selection at that time, type of deal. Most of the selection was done through individual NCO recruitment in the ranks, and they would strip the good soldiers out of the ranks in those days, type thing. In fact, my team sergeant got kicked off of Fort Benning because he was doing that, and he wouldn't change gears. The garrison commander talked to him about it, and Paul would not change. To him, he built a good team with good seed, and so he did that. In fact, as we reminisced one year after retirement for both of us, he was the NCO that gave the recruitment speech at jump school, and then I ran into him in later years. How to put it, the John Wayne show, I know people made fun of it and spoke out against it in the 60s. My first team that I signed into in B Company of the 7th Special Forces at Fort Bragg, there were 2 guys there that were helped with that movie. Okay, one of them was the person who steps out and it says, I speak these languages stuff. The one that says Norwegian, I speak Norwegian and working knowledge of English. That was true for him and some of the other soldiers at the time. It did a lot for all of us, whether it was Hollywood and fantasy. The actual events of the movie really did happen, and then Hollywood got a hold of some of it. But that's what Hollywood does, type thing. A fun note, the team sergeant, Tom Tomlin, his job was the liaison for John Wayne. So every morning when John Wayne showed up, Tom was there with a Jeep and get him here and get him there and type thing. Well, one day there's nothing for lunch. So John Wayne says, what we going to do? And Tom says, how about we go home and have soup and sandwich? Didn't have cell phones in those days. So Tom drives home, and John Wayne and Tom are sitting at the kitchen table when wife Ann, she was a German bride, walks into the kitchen in her bathrobe with her hair in curlers. And she blew a fuse. And Tom slept in the team room for about a week, type of thing. So there was some humor to it. But what we got out of that was a way to get the information out of what was going in the entertainment way of Hollywood. Colonels did not lead patrols.
Right.
The NCOs handled that type thing, and a few lieutenants type thing, and maybe a captain here or there. The basic question was about the training. We had 1 week with each of the MOSs. Type of, mostly familiarization, a little lightweight, hands-on. The medic's going to tell us a few things. That's where we learned to pack a wound with whatever we could find.
Right.
Type thing.
Sticks and rags medicine.
Yep. Sometimes, believe it or not, we use foliage.
Yeah.
That's all we had left. They gave us one little personal bandage you carried on your web gear. The AK shot clear through everybody there that got hit. So you needed two, and you needed one that was bigger. We did have blood expanders that we carried. The medics could start a IV under a poncho with a pin light in their teeth, or they could start it in a foxhole. Our fighting, most of it was done on our stomachs, type of a deal, because it was close in the jungle type thing. Everybody could give an IV, a blood expander. I think it was called serum albumin. I don't remember the name. I'm sure it's changed by now, hopefully for the better. After we got done of our 5 weeks familiarization, we had a couple, 3 weeks of O&I operations and intelligence of how it was being done, and a little bit of how to deal with your counterpart, because you're not in command, you're advising. And then we had Robin Sage, I think was the name, and it was an FTX where we had an actual team, and a lot of the guys were coming out of the NCO training type of deal. And we had regular duty aggressors, we called them in those days, op force type thing, and had an FTX, and that was it. Well, everybody else was in for 20, 30, or 40 weeks of training, and we're an E5 or promotable E6 was what they were looking for type thing. But they were also, casualties were high in those years, so they had some lower ranking guys in there.
Robin Sage, that's like a culmination exercise at the end of the training where all the jobs and ranks come together. Is that right?
Yep, out in the woods. Yep.
Was that pretty, without diving into your time in Vietnam yet, did that prepare you?
Kind of.
Right.
The Army, it was like the other infantry training at basic AIT and the NCO training in OCS. They have a short time to pack in a lot of stuff. And I want to be understood here. I don't regret or have issues with that training. But it's kind of like, we're going to you can watch all the movies about swimming and diving off the high board, but when you're standing on then you go off and you hit the water, things are different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, type of thing. Or we're going to make a skydive today. We're going to teach you about all the technical stuff of your chute, but when you're standing in the door, things are different. Yeah,
and the enemy's always changing. So if they're catering this training versus like on the current TTPs of Vietnam, it's always going to be lagging a little bit. So I feel like it's really important. The Special Forces course specifically trains you to make decisions in the heat of a moment and not necessarily train you to a specific scenario. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And we always had an TAC NCO with us, tactical NCO. The ones that I was around were multi-tour guys, and then they were there to teach you something. They only had 4 or 5 days, and they did type of thing. And at times, even if you were doing a good job, they'd step up and say, "You're dead or you're wounded. You candidate Bartlett, you're now in charge." Type of thing. And I do want to say we got training when we got in country. It was called a 1-0 school for the recon team leaders, and ours was called the Hatchet Force School. The best training aid I had for the surface level things is a Ranger Handbook, period. It really, I don't know what it is today, but there it was the very best, and I was blessed. An NCO gave me one. I was blessed to know what to do. Rapid change of magazines.
Right.
We didn't have. They had the M16. They had a lot of the work out, some of the kinks in it. They had problems with ammo was too hot and gas ports and things, and they had most of that was already solved when I got there. I never had one malfunction, so I was very blessed. But how about changing magazines when you're laying on your stomach?
Yeah.
We had 20-round magazines. We loaded 18 rounds because the spring wouldn't lift up ammo and cause a jam if you put 20 in there. Okay, that's a good thing to learn. Learned that when I got there. With 20-round magazines, we didn't have enough 20-round magazine ammo pouches because they were transitioning from the M14. If you put them in there, they went in too deep. You had to put paper or cardboard or something in there to lift them up. That got soggy with them. You put little tabs of 550 cord, parachute cord on them so you could grab them. Or you carried them in a canteen pouch. Canteen pouch is designed to carry canteen. Okay, to get the ammo magazine out, you have to pop one of the snaps. Well, what happens when you all of a sudden hit the ground?
Yeah.
They all fall out. Then deal with it. And you're in the mud in the jungle.
Yeah.
Okay, then they went to 30-round magazines, and we didn't have anything for them either. Type of deal. So it was a logistical thing. And
it sounds fun. I can relate to this. Like, man, my last tour was in 2021, and even then, equipment issues are always a problem. I don't have the right pouches for the right magazines. I got a optic for the wrong gun. Like, it's all just now more expensive than it was back then. But it's all still an issue.
Well, I would guess, and I would imagine any high tech they add in, you have kinks to work out of it. Does it work when it's cold, when it's wet, when it's muddy?
Yeah.
All those things. We had one Car 15 at that time in the Hatchet Force because the priority was the recon teams. So the point man had the Car 15 with a 30-round magazine. I didn't have the experience, but the platoon sergeant did. They bumped into NVA, and our point man put his weapon to his shoulder, turned his face to the right, and emptied the 30-round magazine, as did the point man for the NVA. Neither one of them hit each other, type of a deal. So you have little glitches like that. Also, rapid change of magazines when you're running forward, backwards, because we're coming online to get firepower in a platoon. So that means they're busting the grass and the jungle to get online and still reload. What we tried to do was put the empty magazines down your jungle fatigue blouse so you would have them, type of deal. Because a resupply problem came in by parachute or chopper. If they kicked out a case of ammo, you had a real problem with no magazines if you lost your magazines. They did correct that, and we started, when we got resupplies, they were loaded 20-round magazines, which helped us a lot, type thing. The other issue was, and I know some people have a hard time believing this, Paul and I, Paul was the E7 platoon sergeant. We called him the team sergeant. We'd carry up to 30 of those 18-round magazines.
Wow.
The reason was the mountain yards, the ones we had, they're the soldiers fighting. They go through the ammo. Okay. I can't say that every time our fire discipline was good. Their idea was put as much ammo out. Mm-hmm. You know, hopefully they say it well in that movie. Later on, they had about the team of SEALs in Africa. I can't think of the title right now. You got to have the ammo out there,
right?
And they hopefully is enough ammo. One of the reasons was if you had close air support coming in, the only way for the NVA to survive that was get to you,
right?
Because you have danger close. Mm-hmm. So they were coming in,
oh, wow.
And you had to put the ammo out there. The other reason for me was what can I do as a leader for my soldiers? So you're going around, you're checking and redistributing ammo, and you're checking on them and stuff. Give them a magazine. Mm-hmm. You know, what else I couldn't think what else to do, type of a thing. And it works. I'd even get a smile once in a while. Mm-hmm. You know, thank you, or a look of wonderment. Why would you give me your magazine? Because I got some extras, and here it is for you. They're the ones doing the fighting. That they need the magazines,
right.
Type of thing. Everybody carried a couple belts for the M60s. We had 3 M60 machine guns, which was a step up because before they had the old one, the smaller one, I don't remember the nomenclature. It was a Browning 7.62 caliber, looked like a miniature 50 caliber machine gun. Okay. The reason I changed there is Dick Meadows is one of our legends. I don't think, how to put it, there's no one man that's a legend of Special Forces, but he put a couple letters in the phrase. They have a statue of him at Fort Bragg. He was asked one time, hey, Dick, how do you break contact? He said, I don't break contact. That's why we have M60 machine guns. Mm-hmm. I took that up. So we had 3 with 20 guys.
I like it.
And when we came online, we could put some firepower out.
Absolutely.
We had M79 gunners.
Right. With
the old break action shotgun type thing. It took a while to iron that out. The first ones had a point detonating round, which the first thing they touched, they detonated. Well, in the jungle, they're going to bust some brush before they get to where they need to be. Mm-hmm. So they had this come out with a spin one. That was better. They also had one with darts in it. That wasn't worth anything. The darts were too light to go through the jungle, and there wasn't enough of them. The best thing was the M16,
wow.
For us anyway.
And it hasn't come very far. We just have the M4, which is essentially the same rifle. Uh-huh. It's just you can modify it a lot more.
Yeah, it had more rails and things.
Yeah.
And that's good. I'm glad to see technology come in if it works.
Right.
If it's some type of extra money for whoever got the contract,
exactly.
No.
Yeah.
And the only way we can test it is get it out there and test it, type thing. We had night vision, but it made a green light about the size of the old flashlight.
Right.
Yeah, we'll try to talk a soldier into putting that up to his head and looking around.
Yeah, when the enemy's actively trying to find you 100 feet away.
Yeah,
probably.
Yeah. Thank you for the target, you know. So
night vision's come a long way, that's for sure.
We Starlight Scope, in fact, they had that in the John Wayne movie. It was just too heavy.
Right.
We had the Law we carried, mostly for busting bunkers.
Mm-hmm. That's a rocket launcher?
Yep. It was collapsible, can't remember, 2.75?
I think so.
Yeah, something like that. I wasn't there, but when the initial ones came in, again, they had testing problems. Well, the first ones fired by some of the guys at CCN, the front part of the tube left with a rocket. Mm-hmm. And the wire that goes across the top would cut your ear to the bone and on the cheekbone. Well, then you had a walking casualty you had to deal with. They got that worked out. They had a humorous story the NCOs would tell in the club about one of the guys, and I can't say his name. I don't have permission, but
sure.
He didn't know how to shoot it because he'd never been trained with it. They just kicked a case of them off the chopper.
Right.
So he's laying behind this big log reading the directions as fast as he possibly
What a time to be reading a book.
Yeah. So he could shoot it, and he was one of the ones who got the cut
Yeah.
ear and in his cheekbone.
Someone had to figure it out the hard way.
Yeah.
We always say that.
They got it figured out. And you have a problem then, too, especially with the recon team. If they don't work and you can't shoot them, you can't leave them.
Right.
The enemy's going to get them.
That's true.
For
They'll
sure.
figure it out.
Oh, they'll figure it out, yeah. So those kind of problems.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Finish your thought.
For us, our world was different than a recon team. All due respect to 5 or 6 guys out there with just one other American. Did we have some infiltrators? Yeah, sure did. Type. That's part of unconventional war and guerrilla warfare.
Right.
We expect it to happen, okay? That takes a lot of guts, and they did it well. But our world was different.
Right.
It would take 3 to 5 choppers just to lift us. That meant multiple insert to get us in, the small LZs that we had in the Highlands type of thing. Stealth was not one of our issues. Time you walk a fully loaded platoon through the jungle, you got a path, a little tunnel and a path. We always had trackers, always. They lived on the few LZs. There were 3 of them at minimum, okay? They're going to let you in because they want you, okay? Well, okay, so when we take off, wherever we're going, they follow us. 2 of them follow us. 1 goes for the cavalry because they didn't have a lot of small type communications, or they'd use shots. You could hear them go down the valley. When you sat down for the night, 1 kept eyes on us, and 1 went to bring up the cavalry that the first person went to get us. And again, we're not hard to follow, but there's information they're going to trade. We would, if we were doing it that way, we would have flankers and we would have trackers. Always. They were going to be, they'd try to herd us to a place. Wherever they pushed us to, we tried not to go because we figured that's where they wanted us to be.
Right.
A type of a deal. We used to joke, well, E5, you want to be E6? Yeah, I want to be E6. Okay, fine. Well, you wait here for the tracker. That's K-bar work. We want that tracker for information. Well, you don't get a lot of volunteers out of brave Green Berets to sit back there by themselves. So it was more of a joke than deal. We did have some attempts to try to get them. We believe that most of the trackers were Laotian people that lived in those woods, and they were good, really good. And to get one of them, we did get sightings, but we never got one. If we got a prisoner in those days, it was a 30-day leave to go home. Some said there was a cash bonus, but I don't know about that. Also, NCOs would be promoted 1 stripe, and if they chose to, they could have reassignment anywhere in the Army. Most of them shunned that part. They were like, 30 days sounds fine, then I come back and be with the team, that kind of mentality, which was to their credit. POW snatches, Dick Meadows was a master of that. I read his after-action reports when I could get them. We never got one, but we tried. Tried to get them. And you have to look at it from the enemy's point of view. They don't want to be captured either. And so they fought to the end. We also had the issue of the areas we operated in. We specifically took a platoon that was an opposite in ethnicity, in that Vietnamese, questionable, are they going to kill each other? Are Brew Mountain Yards going to kill each other? Probably not. Cambodians and Chinese kill everybody. They don't have that problem. We wanted someone that would fight and would kill, because that was our mission that we were in as a platoon type thing. So it was different than recon. And again, I'm not downplaying anything recon did. They had their own job and they did it. There's no doubt about it. So A bigger group of people on a different type of mission. If we had a target to hit, we were going to destroy the target in the old-fashioned shoot 'em up way to do that. And when we were carry appropriate amount of C4 or claymores or whatever, we needed to take care of that target. Claymores were our main defense in a perimeter at night. Every single night, you dig down to the armpits type deal. And you didn't have to tell our mountain yards or our soldiers, whatever group they were, twice to dig in. Because they were going to dig in. You couldn't even stop them from digging in. You know, we never broke topsoil.
Oh, wow.
Not ever. Worms were bigger around than your fingers and 2 feet long.
I can imagine.
Yeah. If, one of the
jungle, right?
Jungle different. And in fact, one of the NCOs grew up a farm family. He said these people would stop fighting. They could feed the whole world with this type of soil. You know, the other farms where he came from out of, I believe, Arkansas didn't have that much topsoil type thing. I did want to share one humorous story. When I first signed in, I wanted to be a good leader and a good officer, you know. And Paul one day came up right after I got there. "Oh, do you want to help train the soldiers?" "Well, yeah, heck yeah. Okay, you're in charge of knot tying." Because at that time we were just starting to get stable rigs, and Recon got them first. And so we were waiting to have enough for one for everybody. Well, that's not exactly true. The medic carried extra ones for extraction of wounded. So I'm pleased to be included, you know, and as a 19, 20-year-old lieutenant, I kind of look like Buster Brown wearing a green beret. That's what my team sergeant would say.
Nice.
Or the little Dutch boy paint. Yeah, okay. So a source of amusement for the guys, right? Okay. So up I go. And the 3 platoons are in a horseshoe formation by their platoon number and their ethnicity: Cambodians, Blue Mountain Yards, Vietnamese, Chinese. Okay. So I start to try to explain how to tie a knot. And then the 3 interpreters would go to work. Well, the soldiers, it was a typical initiation for any new officer. So the soldiers are trying to keep from laughing, and the NCOs are watching, you know.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And so finally, it would seem like forever, Paul stepped in and said, "Let me show you how we do this." And he was a person who could read, write, and speak 8 languages.
Wow.
That time. He could troop a company line, and every other step he could change languages, including American cuss words type thing. But anyway, he takes the we called it a Swiss seat. It was a 3/4-inch nylon rope. I think, what was it? Can't remember how long it was. Not very long, 6, 8 feet. You had to tie that in a seat around your groin area to hook into the 120-foot nylon line drop from the helicopter. You hooked in there, and then you hung onto the rope, and they could lift up 4 guys at a time.
So like a handmade harness type?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, type of deal. Also, we could tie Swiss seats together if we needed a longer rope for whatever, which never happened, but we had them. He does an about face, so you don't have the mirror as an image as a instructor. Without a word, he taught the soldiers how to tie knots. Watch me.
Wow.
Hands over his head and tied the knots type of thing. And of course, I can't imagine the stories in the club that night at CC.
That's funny.
But it was a simple solution to a simple thing if you had the experience and the knowledge.
Absolutely.
Type of thing.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify, maybe backtrack a little bit, because you're starting to dive into like some of the stories in Vietnam. So you had mentioned the 5 or 6 man teams. That was actually that was MACV-SOG teams, and then you had the Hatchet Force, which is what you were. So do you mind just kind of clarifying the difference between the two?
Okay, yes. Recon would be like a squad. Recon team would be like an infantry squad. Okay. Our configuration at that time was at least 2 Americans type. They went by their radio call sign. 10 was the team leader type rank. Most of the ranks that I saw at CCN were E5, E6s, a few E7s, an occasional officer once in a while type thing. It was squad recon type type work. Then they would have, I don't know, 4, 6, maybe. I think that was the max, because part of it was lift capability of the original Huey, and the altitudes and the highlands, for lack of air, for the bird to be able to lift up, type deal. Ethnicity would dictate some of the numbers too. I was told that some of them didn't like odd numbers and some didn't like even numbers, and on and on. They worked like putting a puzzle together to make all that work. Most of the recon indigenous soldiers had way more experience and in the hatchet force than any of us had, because they lived there, and we paid a very handsome salary. They were mercenaries. Our privates made what I was told a lieutenant colonel in the South Vietnamese Army made. So it was a very handsome amount of money for them. Recon teams depended on stealth and speed when they needed it, type of a thing. If they got a man down, that was a problem.
Right.
Type of deal. In the jungle, it takes 4 to carry them, at least 4 type. Plus you wear out because you have that person's rucksack and weapon to deal with it. We had emergency aircraft, of course, to help with that situation. But you have to understand that there was no artillery fans to provide help, no mortar fans. Air came 20, 30 minutes on a good day. They came from Vietnam. They came from Thailand. Da Nang, Vietnam for the fast movers, the Phantoms. 101st Airborne supported us with rotary wing. It takes a while to get everybody going, even when you're waiting to go.
Yeah.
You know, helicopters, the weather affected them more, I think, than the other fixed wing. We had A-1E Sky Raiders. They were a World War II fighter plane brought back in service, and even brought reserve officers back to fly them for us. They were great. They could stay on station a while and carry a lot of ordnance. The Phantom jets, you're lucky if you get 1 or 2 passes, because they were burning the fuel out.
Right.
They had to go home. They came out of Nakhon Phanom, Thailand, Ubon, Thailand, and Udor, Thailand, as I understood it. We were a ranger in the hatchet force. We were a ranger platoon looking for a fight. Okay, we had a specific target to hit or to verify. We were also the goat in some cases. By that I mean the goat, they tie up on a stake so the tiger will come get it, and then the aircraft takes care of the approaching enemy. That happened to us almost every mission.
Right.
To mild harassment until time came for the fighting type deal. We didn't think of stealth. We couldn't. Try and keep 20-some guys quiet. I mean,
Impossible.
They're working pretty hard just to get through the jungle. The recon people. I never went on a recon mission. I went on one 5-man reconnaissance of a target we were to hit, and that was enough for me.
I'm sure.
Way too small. No, I can't tell you how nervous I was. And also, we were separated from our platoon. The safety is the platoon, and we went into I keep saying perimeter. Our perimeters were triangular because we put the 3 machine guns on the apex. So if you had to, you could swing them and have a wall of fire coming through. We never had to do that, but that was the plan. I did do one mission with a company. It was just too big for me. How do you control it? I mean, a whole bunch of guys out there stomping around. And so the platoon made sense for me. We called the platoon. It was always in the mid-20s, how many people we could take. A lot of it depended on lift capability of air support type thing. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the way I'm understanding it is you have the recon teams and the hatchet teams.
Yep.
And if the recon teams got bogged down, you guys were coming in to
Yes, we supported it much Have you seen the John Wayne movie?
Yes.
Okay. Much like the Mike Force came to support the A Camp,
Okay.
and they came in company and battalion. They even made airborne insertions. In John Wayne's movie, it's a helicopter insertion, rotary wing. We were platoon size. Now, they did have a couple incidences. One was at CCC, Command and Control Central, used a company to block one of the roads on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And so that would be a company operation. That was the famous thing of Tailwind movie. I don't know if it was a movie, documentary type of a deal. So for us, because of the terrain, we were different. The mountains a little bit different from CCC in the middle, and Command Control South dealing with rice paddies and flat terrain, that kind of thing down there. Also, depending on how much air support we could get. You remember, they didn't have the special ops type huge unit. We had to coordinate with, in our case, with 101st Airborne. On my last extraction was hot. We had wounded and dead, and I called a prairie fire, that meant we're in trouble and we ain't gonna make it. We need help. We had what it was a C-130 aircraft with a command officer, I believe it was general grade, was always in the air, and they could divert much. We had 4 Phantoms on station once they got there. We had 6 A-1E Sky Raiders. They ran them north and south and east and west, so you don't have mid-air collisions type thing. And I didn't learn until 3 years ago that the 101st showed up with over 100 rotary wing to pull us 22 guys out type thing. And, praise the Lord and thank goodness the only reason I'm here is rotary wing and fixed wing pilots and crews and their incredible courage.
Right.
The cornfield that we were using for an extraction LZ, the locals had cleared it, the jungle, but they left the tree stumps about 5 feet tall or 6 feet to keep the choppers from landing.
Right.
Okay. Which meant dead and wounded, you had to press them up far enough for the chase medic to grab them and drag them in to the Huey.
Wow.
Type of deal. He was on a monkey strap so he wouldn't fall out type thing. And thank God for strong men, to pull them up type thing. That meant the chopper had to hover even longer at that height. Well, the wounded was loaded. I was in the last load out. I pushed Paul up, the chase medic, I wish I could remember his name. He grabbed Paul and got Paul in. The whole time that bird's taking rounds, okay? And to demonstrate or express the courage and the gratitude, bullets were going into that bird like everything. But that pilot, I can still remember looking over my left shoulder at him, and he's just sitting there cranking on the stick with his eyes out the front of the bird. When we got back, the door gunners and the co-pilot were dead. And I was told there was over 200 holes in that chopper.
Wow.
He sat there and toughed that out. And here's the amazing part. When we landed, any of the chopper pilots, if their bird was damaged, just he did it and they all did it. They walk over and get another bird and go back to get another load type of thing. That's guts.
Yeah, absolutely. That pilot, I can describe something. And you can attest to this, I'm sure. There's a moment of clarity when a human being accepts that it is possibly about to die.
Yep.
And I think that pilot was probably sitting there knowing at any second a bullet could go through his engine, through his head, through anyone on that bird. And he just had that clarity. He was doing his job. He knew he was doing the right thing, so he continued doing it, and he survived because of it. The honor of having done the right thing regardless of the outcome,
right? Type thing. For us, we seldom, if ever, got a chance to thank them. They touched down long enough for us to unload, and they went to refuel to go another trip. Where our fixed wing goes by at how many hundreds of miles an hour?
Yeah,
and they're out in an air base in another place or country.
Yeah.
And so in the last few years, I've made it a vendetta. If I meet those kind of veterans, I'm going to thank them for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand that as a medic. I've given however many casualties to a Black Hawk, and there goes my casualty. I hear they survive, and I don't even know who the pilot was, the medic was, or anyone was. And I owe them everything because they picked up where I left off and saved their life.
You have one more very pleasant surprise and blessing coming to you, young man. I'm going to call you that because I am the elder. Number of years back, MACV-SOG got the Presidential Unit Citation.
2001, right?
Yep. After the 25 years went by for security. Mm-hmm. Okay. I went to that. I was in the Colorado National Guard Special Forces Battalion at the time. And the Army put out an all-call for anybody who was remotely connected to the military, all expenses paid, please come. So it ended up there was 13 of us. I'm the one on the extreme right if you look at the pictures type thing. At that ceremony during the social times, I got to meet guys I threw on the chopper. And you say incredible stuff. You know the game. We'll see you there. Here's some cash. Stick it in your pocket. Mm-hmm. You know, love you, that kind of thing. And you know you're both lying.
Yeah. Just doing it.
Just doing it to try to make them feel
for sure.
better. Yeah. And I got to meet them and their families. In one case, their kids and grandkids at that ceremony.
That's amazing.
That's waiting on you, medic.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good feeling. Don't avoid it.
Yeah.
Soak it up if you get the chance.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't avoid it. I guess I'm technically a retiree. I'm 31 years old, but I don't feel like a retired vet. You know?
Yeah, good.
But when I see, the guy wearing a hat like yours at Costco, I was just there with my girlfriend the other day. I saw a guy with a Vietnam ribbon on a hat, and I talked to him for 5 minutes. Said thanks for your service. I know my father was in Vietnam. I just take the opportunity to talk about it.
Good for you.
We all have to.
It's much appreciated from the elder end.
Absolutely,
it really is. Don't pass it up. Well accepted, especially with Vietnam vets because of the issues we had in the culture.
Absolutely. You're never welcomed back properly.
Time. One of the things towards the end of the interview I wanted to bring out, so help me remember when we get there, in your retirement, make it count. Don't stack arms. Don't pile guns and quit. Stay off the booze. Stay off the dope. Keep that good woman with you, and go on, and then somehow put some frosting on the cake to help the younger guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I guess I probably said it, and we don't have to say it again.
Yeah.
But
that's what we're trying to accomplish with this podcast. Is putting that word out there. So,
and I'm thinking the younger generation is open to podcasts.
Absolutely.
It type the technology and stuff. So for some of us may will. I know I took a little bit of ribbing about having done one, now we have to do one because old man, get off your butt and do something. You still. My phrase is, you aren't dead. You're just walking wounded because of age and whatever else happened to a person as they go through. And I got that again from, I'll say his name, Paul Machad. He's in the last stages of Alzheimer's now, so he won't scold me for saying his name. Silver Star with Oak Leaf Cluster.
Wow.
4 Purple Hearts.
Wow.
Yeah. In that same extraction that we were going through, he'd been hit twice in the leg, AK-47 in the right thigh. One went clear through, one hit the bone, went down, lodged under his kneecap. The cartridge did it. And so I'm trying to attend to him and try to shoot and stuff. Finally, he sticks his fingers in the 2 holes, and he says, "Lieutenant, I'm not dead. I'm just wounded. Start fighting." Some kind of words like that. And finally dawned on me, okay, take care of that. So from the saying, "I'm only wounded, I ain't dead, and maybe I can't get in the fight, but I can stick my fingers in the holes," type thing. And in fact, he would tease my children when they were young. Do you want to stick your fingers in my bullet holes? Just to tease them. So yeah,
I like that saying though. I'm not dead. I'm just wounded. You can apply that to a lot of things.
I heard it a couple years back from a New Mexico Santa Fe police officer on a traffic stop was shot, and then the brother officers swarmed in to help, and they were trying to help him, and he told them the same thing. I'm not dead. I'm just shot. No, he said, just because I'm shot doesn't mean I'm dead.
Right.
Type thing.
Yeah.
Type thing. So I imagine it's easy say, tough do, but I've never been. My Purple Heart, I lost more blood learning to shave than I did. For my country, it was lightweight shrapnel stuff in the butt end, and that was a great source of amusement for the sergeants.
That's funny.
But if one walked in the studio today, he'd be sure that he mentioned that to you so that you would know it. And that's why we speak out, is for the people who really got hurt.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not, for years I wouldn't wear mine or have a bumper sticker or a license plate. Mm-hmm. And again, Paul and my wife, Jenna, we had a reunion New Year's time and then Memorial Day time, and go to his place because of his age and health situations. I had a regular team room, which was 30 feet wide and 40 feet long, and had an old-time jukebox and everything, R-type music.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. And he said, there's 23 of us here, MACV-SOG guys. There's 18 of them got Purple Hearts.
Wow.
Some of them got multiple Purple Hearts.
Mm-hmm.
They all got Purple Heart license plates, Lieutenant. No matter that I got promoted, he still called me Lieutenant. Mm-hmm. Never would call me sir because he hated officer. Why don't you have a Purple Heart plate? I told him because I didn't lose much blood getting it. Mm-hmm. And he said he called bullshit, Paul called crap. He said, you're a real talkative guy, and you're the only one young enough to speak up for us. Mm-hmm. So get your butt in gear, Lieutenant. And that's when I put the plate on and type thing.
For your brothers, not necessarily for you.
I'm sorry?
For your brothers, not necessarily for you.
Yeah, that's right. It's all about them. If you need, sometime if you're feeling sorry for yourself, you call me. We'll get in the pickup and we'll go to the hospital in Aurora. Right. And we'll walk a couple floors. And as a medic, by then you will understand. Yeah, absolutely. How fortunate you are.
Yeah. I think, we all just need to understand how fortunate we really are, because that sign says it all. There's people who've really sacrificed a lot for this country, and to sit here in our nice studio with our coffee and water, people take that for granted.
Yeah, and we're going to have a good meal. We'll be warm and dry and nobody's shooting at us. And we may have a bad dream once in a while, or the 4th of July fireworks startle us, or there's no easy road. Try to use the skills we learned in combat with the brothers to carry us through in a less violent environment. Be a good example. I don't want to be on a corner in an old wore-out set of jungle fatigues with a tin can cup of yellow pencils, begging for money. And I worry about so much entitlements for some of us, too. Sometimes you got to grit your teeth and gut it out. Right. And there are a bunch of vets doing that. Don't get me wrong. We have some bad examples. The suicide thing is heartbreaking.
Absolutely.
What can I say? In fact, I took some classes from our suicide prevention agency in Woodland Park, there, Teller County and El Paso County, where they teach us what to say when you get the phone call. Yeah. It's hard, sir. Part of it is lecture. Part of it is role play your final. It's not really an exam, your final event. You role play, and the instructor plays the part of the vet that's made the call. Right. And I'm sitting here proving how gabby I am. Okay, I couldn't think of a word to say.
Absolutely.
It's tough, but what I wanted, and I got it, because I had to go 3 times, but I got it. I don't want an empty magazine pouch when the stuff hits the fan. And maybe the words will come. You know, people say, well, I don't want to learn to swim if I ever fall in the water, I'll learn then. Wrong answer.
Right.
You know, and neither will the normal human being have the answers.
Yeah.
I haven't had to deal with that call or that conversation.
Yeah.
But at least I want to be ready. And I have a little card in my billfold in case I forget the words.
Yeah, absolutely. I've gotten, unfortunately, that call a couple times as a medic, and I didn't really know what to say either.
Yeah.
One of the phone calls is resonating with me. It was a good friend of mine, and I didn't know what to say, so I just kind of started a casual conversation that had nothing to do with what he was talking about. I think it was around Super Bowl time 2 years ago, and so I started talking about football. He was, crying. He was in the moment, and I was just like, hey, man, were you watching the football game today? Like, just something very random. And I was like, I'm going to come over. We're going to finish watching the game, and we're just going to chat. So I feel like in that moment, when a soldier's suicidal, they forget about everything else, and they're just so hyper-focused and looking through these little goggles on this one thing that's making them feel that way. So you really just have to open their eyes back up to the beauty of life. You know?
Yep. But there is something there to live for.
Absolutely.
That's exactly in the format they gave us. Yeah, good for you. And God bless you for doing that. You saved a life. That's what medics do.
Thanks for listening to part 1 of our interview with retired Green Beret John Bartlett. Tune in next week for part 2, where John dives deep into his life after the military, as well as ways he's staying active in the veteran community of Colorado.
You've been listening to The Veteran's Voice, presented by USAA. Veteran's Voice is a service of Mount Carmel Veterans Service Center and originates from the Optum Podcast Studio, located on the Mount Carmel Veterans Service Center campus in Colorado Springs, Colorado. The podcast channel is provided by Medicare Mentors. Computing power is provided by Technology Partner Colorado Computer Support. Additional funding is provided by supporting partner, the WireNut Home Services. Veterans Voice airs on flagship station KRDO News Radio, Sundays at 7:30 a.m. The podcast publishes Saturday at 8 a.m. and is available on all your favorite podcast apps.